So let's move to the main course of our today's conference, and let's hear about the revolution of technologies and how they affect the maritime industry. So I would like to invite Mr. David Tropp Hag, the Vice President of KVH Industries from Denmark, I guess, who will talk to us about how gaining control of your SATCOM, but I leave the floor to you.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Is this the clicker? Correct. Yeah. Ooh, bright lights. Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Nice to be back in Cyprus. The subject of today, artificial intelligence, isn't really KVH's area of expertise. We do connectivity, we do network management, and both are very important elements to bring AI to life on the vessel. But for today's opening, I did ask ChatGPT to come up with some suggestions to witty comparisons between Danish and Cyprus culture, and it showed the brilliance of AI, but also the shortcomings, because all the comparisons were about the great, abundant life in Cyprus and the sunny weather, which fell a bit short, as we had 16 degrees in Denmark when I left, and we had 10, 15 here. It's the first time I've been cold in Cyprus, I think. But anyway, there's still an abundance here of food and of good, hospitality. So thank you very much for welcoming me. But my session is going to be very practical, down to earth, about how do you manage connectivity on your vessel. Because today, there's been kind of a shift in what's available on the vessel. So let me start by asking a question. What is the difference between a supercar and a LEO? And first of all, LEO is low Earth orbit satellite connectivity. This one is definitely prettier than a LEO satellite, and there are lots of differences. But the main difference that I want to get to here is that a supercar like this one comes with nice controls in terms of steering wheels, brakes, and things like that. And this leads to success on the race course and victory. But with LEO satellites, it's not so easy. They are supercharged, but have no controls built in. So that could spell a very disastrous ride if you don't get controls in place. Just to put an example in for that, just some data on what happens if you let a Starlink run loose. Here some examples of video streaming. A crew member watching 1 hour of high-definition TV will consume 3 gigabytes of data. And if it's an ultra-high definition, it's 7 gigabytes of data. So you can see that will quickly run up and eat all your budget in the month before one single business email has been sent. Actually, running at full speed, the Starlink will consume around 100 gigabytes per hour if you run it to the max all the time. So that's a lot, especially when some of the subscriptions start at 50 gigabytes per month. So controls are necessary. At KVH, we have taken this upon us because we want to supply these great services to the vessels, but we also want to supply the tools that are needed to control them. Control is many different things. First of all, we want you to be able to control a wide array of different connectivity solutions, because Starlink is great and other LEO solutions are great, but they're not always there. I mean, there are countries that don't allow them. There are times when they're not available. So you need backup carriers, such as traditional VSAT or 5G connectivity, or even trusted old L-band solutions like Fleet Broadband or Iridium. On the vessel, you need to create and manage multiple networks to keep traffic separated between the crew network, the business network, the machine-to-machine network, and things like that. And you need to be able to optimize how traffic is routed between the different networks and the different carriers. Finally, you need to establish different rules and permissions for different groups of people on board, for different networks, and for different carriers. So there's a lot of different access, and it's a big matrix to fill in here. We enable all that. What are the things you should be looking at to get all those things in place? First of all, you should look for a solution that allows you to set network policies, such as WAN optimization. WAN is the wide area network, being the carriers that you use on the vessel, LEO or VSAT or 5G, Iridium. You should be able to set up prioritization so that you can choose which channels to use for which types of traffic. You should also be able to set quota controls, so you can set limits, how much data you want to use per different carrier. You should even be able to set rate limiters, saying that, well, my Starlink is great, it can do 200 megabits per second, but actually I don't want it to use 200 megabits per second. I want it to use 50 megabits per second, because then my budget would last for the whole month. And yeah, on the land side, you also need to be able to optimize. You need to be able to, again, limit some networks if you want to, so that they don't use more than they should. And you should be able to manage by protocol type also. So if you say, okay, my crew is allowed to watch YouTube, but I don't want it to eat my whole bandwidth, so they can have 10 megabits per second for that. All those things, they can be done with a good network management tool. Yeah, and then you can build different software-defined switching profiles, so that you have the highest priority carriers, the next priority carriers, and the lowest priority carriers switching automatically between each other. On the vessel side, you need to create the networks that I mentioned before, set them up, the vessel LAN, the crew LAN, other LANs, and you need to have watertight walls between them, so you don't have cross traffic between the crew network and the business network. These are standard cybersecurity best practices that you set up those kinds of rules. And then you distribute the networks out onto the vessels with regular switching and Wi-Fi technology. You also want to be able to manage remote access, because we see more and more that people want to be able to manage things without having to travel to the vessel. That could be the IT department of the vessel, of the shipping company, but it could also be any kind of OEM manufacturer having a piece of equipment on board the vessel with an Ethernet plug. I mean, everything today has a service port, and Ethernet is the standard for that. So if it's plugged into your network on board, you can basically provide remote access to the manufacturer of this piece of equipment. But you need to do that in a safe way. You can't just leave it open and then everybody can jump on when they want. So we provide you solutions that are safe and time limited. Basically, you are able to grant access to one specific IP on the vessel for a time set period. You can always revoke it. You can have multi-factor authentication for these connections. So in the end, you can just send a link to your pump manufacturer. Say, click this link, it'll get you directly to your pump on the vessel. And you only have access to that IP address, and 2 hours later, it will be revoked again. So that's a very safe and secure way of doing it, and it leaves you to basically give everyone access without risking they do anything on the vessel. So very, very nice. Optimization is very important, because more and more we see shipping companies wanting to run their business through a VPN tunnel. And typically it's very difficult to optimize on traffic that is inside a VPN tunnel. But we have a very clever proxy PEP on our network device, allowing you to actually optimize traffic so that it's still gaining the full benefit of the high-speed networks out there. And it does it in a way that doesn't limit you. Some of the PEPs available out there on equipment will actually charge you if you want to use this nice function to optimize within your VPN tunnel. So this is a great feature of our COMBOX, as our tool is called. Reporting, of course, important for your management of the networks on board and for being able to present status of what is going on the vessel to your management if you're in the IT management team. Another thing that's always been important, but still is, content filtering. You can do this by network. So if you have a crew network, business network, you can set different content filters. You can both block on categories of content, but you can also block on protocols, for example, of types of applications. And you can set these policies per local area network, but also per carrier. So you have the full flexibility, basically, to manage traffic. You can say, this device on this network trying to access Facebook will only be allowed so and so much bandwidth. So it's very versatile. For the crew, our solution also comes with a captive portal, meaning everything is automated. When they want to access the internet, they log on a screen, they can self-register, they don't have to go and ask the master to set up a new account for them. They can self-register, they can replenish their account. And if there are company-provided data volumes per month, they can have that. And then next to it, they can have own purchased bandwidth. So there's the flexibility to have both free data from the company and also purchased data from the crew themselves. And all that can be managed on a weekly or monthly or daily basis. So that's the winning combo: supercars and satellites. There is our version of that, KVH VSAT antenna and a Starlink antenna, plus our wonderful COMBOX. And to result is a happy IT manager. That is it from my side.
I have one question.
Yeah.
We have one question.
Happy to have questions.
Yes. By on-board experience, the high-speed bandwidth of Starlink renders the use of WAN with bandwidth limiters, i.e. use of 100 megabytes codes unusable. The 100 megabytes are used within seconds, even with the firewall limiting apps, programs using the network. What is your suggestion to resolve this issue?
If you have a monthly allowance of 100 gigabytes, our suggestion would be to cut it up in 4 halves, in 4 quarters, for example. Say 25 gigabytes is my weekly allowance, and then set a profile that says when 50% of that is used, I will limit the speed to 50%. When 75% is used, I will limit the speed again, so that you make sure that through the first week, you have full access to your bandwidth. And then next week, you have the same pattern again.
Is it covered, Mr. or Mrs. Fotriou? Just a second.
Another way, may I add, to economize is to have true SD-WAN running so that you can have non-critical data going in the background or over your backup carriers, because typically your backup carriers will be on a fixed cost, unlimited, but slow speed. So you can keep processes running on the slow speed, unlimited services, and then you can have your time-critical, data-hungry applications running on the Starlink higher speed data.
The system on board was 20 codes, 100 megabyte per code.
20 what?
20 codes with 100 megabyte bandwidth per code. So when you connect with one code, you can only use 100 megabytes. And when it's done, you have to use the next code. But as I said in the question, when you connect with that code, within seconds, it's used up.
With 100 megabytes?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a total of 2 gigabytes per month.
Right. Yeah, that's a fairly low allowance, of course. But then it's dangerous to give people access to a 200 megabit per second connection if they have 100 megabytes only, because that'll be gone at the blink of an eye, as you say. So maybe the solution there would be to say for the crew network, we will, first of all, we'll limit the speed, but we'll also limit the applications that you can access. So maybe there's no Facebook, maybe there's no YouTube. You can have WhatsApp, you can have email, you can have, I don't know. So that would be a way to control such a limited budget.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you very much.